The ancient cruiser emerged from hyperspace with a metallic groan. The ship had seen better centuries, its hull pitted with micrometeorite scars and patched with mismatched panels that looked suspiciously like they'd been scavenged from other vessels. Technically, it belonged to the Gal-fed Xenobiological Survey Division. In reality, it was a floating coffin for career-ending assignments. Commander Zhk'Tarl of the Vespidian Collective stood on the bridge, compound eyes fixed on the viewscreen as a small blue-green planet rotated lazily before them. His exoskeleton clicked softly as he shifted his weight, mandibles twitching with barely contained irritation. "Surveillance drone reports complete, Commander," chirped Lieutenant Fnx, her translucent wings vibrating nervously. The indigenous population was terminated approximately 47 standard cycles ago. Radiation levels now permit safe exploration. Cause? Zhk'Tarl's voice was flat, uninterested. This was his 9th Dead World survey this rotation. Nuclear conflict, followed by biological warfare, standard self-extinction pattern for pre-interstellar civilizations. Contamination is minimal now, and the ecosystem is partially recovered. Zhk'Tarl's antennae drooped slightly. These missions were always the same. Catalog the ruins, collect cultural artifacts, file the reports under preventable tragedies in the Galactic archives. Another footnote in the endless saga of species who destroyed themselves before achieving first contact. Prepare the landing party, standard protocol. He turned to leave when Fnx made an alarming, trilling sound. "Commander, the drones have detected a life sign, a single signal, indigenous species." Zhk'Tarl froze, his outer eyelids clicking rapidly. "Impossible. The surveillance was thorough." "It's definitely there, sir. Weak but stable. In a subterranean structure near what was once a major population center." For the first time in many cycles, Commander Zhk'Tarl felt something resembling excitement ripple through his thorax. A survivor. This had never happened before. Every other post-apocalyptic world they'd surveyed had been completely sterilized of intelligent life. "Alert the xenobiologists, prepare containment protocols. I want a full briefing in 20 minutes. As Zhk'Tarl marched down the corridor, his mind raced with possibilities. This single survivor could provide invaluable insights into how a species copes with extinction-level events. And perhaps, just perhaps, this discovery would finally get him reassigned to a mission worthy of his abilities. Little did he know that the lone human survivor would prove to be the most frustrating, perplexing, and ultimately universe-altering discovery in his entire career. Dr. Yl'Soreth, the ship's senior xenobiologist, was already speaking when Zhk'Tarl entered the briefing room. The Arcturian's gelatinous form pulsed with excitement, the bioluminescent patterns flowing across her transparent skin, indicating intense intellectual stimulation. "Most remarkable. According to our scans, this specimen has survived in isolation for approximately 12 local years since the extinction event. The structure appears to be a pre-war bunker designed specifically for long-term habitation." Zhk'Tarl settled into his command perch. "Species assessment?" Dr. Yl'Soreth's upper pseudopods rippled. They called themselves humans, bipedal mammals, carbon-based average lifespan of 80-90 local years, technologically advanced enough to destroy themselves but not enough to save themselves. "Typical," muttered Zhk'Tarl. "And this survivor? What makes it special?" "That's what's fascinating, Commander." Yl'Soreth's voice bubbled with enthusiasm. "By all our data, it shouldn't be alive. This bunker lost power 7 years ago. The water recycling system failed 5 years ago. The food supplies should have been exhausted 3 years ago. And yet," Lieutenant Fnx projected a hologram showing thermal imagery of the bunker. Deep underground, a small heat signature pulsed steadily. "The survivor appears to be in a state of semi-stasis, but it's not technological. It's biological. This human has somehow adapted to minimal resources in a way that defies our understanding of their physiological capabilities." "Is it dangerous?" asked Zhk'Tarl, practical as always. Dr. Yl'Soreth's color pattern shifted to the Arcturian equivalent of a shrug. Their species was aggressive and territorial by nature. But this one? Isolated for 12 years, possibly the last of its kind. Psychological assessment is impossible to predict. Zhk'Tarl's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Galactic Council had strict protocols for contact with surviving members of self-extinguished species. Most were euthanized humanely, as rehabilitation was deemed impossible and contamination risks too high. But something about this case felt different. A single survivor, against all odds, in conditions that should have been fatal years ago. Prepare a containment and extraction team. Full biohazard protocols. I want to see this human myself. The landing shuttle touched down 3 kilometers from the bunker entrance. The extraction team moved out in formation, their environmental suits gleaming in the pale sunlight that filtered through the planet's recovering atmosphere. The landscape around them was eerily beautiful. Ruins overtaken by vegetation, nature reclaiming what civilization had abandoned. Zhk'Tarl led the team personally, something he hadn't done in cycles. Lieutenant Fnx followed close behind, nervously, monitoring her scanner. Life sign remained steady, Commander. No change in status. They approached what appeared to be a hillside, unremarkable except for a massive steel door built into its base. Once it might have been camouflaged, but years of weather had stripped away the disguising elements. Cutting team forward, Zhk'Tarl ordered. 2 technicians approached with molecular disruptors, their tools emitting a soft blue glow as they began disintegrating the locking mechanism. The massive door groaned but didn't budge. Interesting, mused Dr. Yl'Soreth, who had insisted on joining the expedition. The door appears to have been barricaded from the inside. Zhk'Tarl's antennae twitched. The survivor doesn't want visitors. Or something else wanted in, suggested Fnx, earning a sharp look from her commander. With a final metallic protest, the door mechanism failed, and the extraction team forced it open. Stale air rushed out, carrying the complex bouquet of a sealed environment long cut off from the outside world. The team's sensors analyzed it instantly. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, elevated carbon dioxide levels, traces of mold spores, human pheromones, and something else, something chemical and unfamiliar. Proceed with caution, Zhk'Tarl ordered as they activated their illumination fields and entered the darkness. The bunker entrance led to a long, sloping corridor that descended deep, underground. The walls were lined with what appeared to be information placards and emergency instructions in the human language. Fnx's translator program worked quickly, converting the symbols. In case of nuclear strike, she read aloud. Proceed calmly to lower levels. Do not block corridors. Follow warden instructions. She paused. Commander, this wasn't a survival bunker for one individual. This was designed for hundreds. Zhk'Tarl processed this information silently. Where were the others? Had they perished inside? Had they left? Or had something more sinister occurred? As they descended deeper, the evidence of long habitation became clear. The first large chamber they encountered appeared to be a communal area, with seating arrangements, food preparation stations, and what Dr. Yl'Soreth identified as entertainment systems. All abandoned, covered in a fine layer of dust, but strangely orderly. No signs of conflict, noted Zhk'Tarl. No remains. Perhaps they left when conditions deteriorated, suggested Yl'Soreth. Into what? Fnx gestured toward a flickering display panel that still functioned on emergency power. It showed external conditions from years ago, radiation levels far beyond, survivable limits, atmospheric toxicity at maximum scale. They continued deeper, passing through sleeping quarters arranged in efficient rows, medical facilities, and storage rooms with empty shelves. Everything was methodically organized yet abandoned. The life sign led them to the lowest level, behind a heavy security door that, unlike the main entrance, opened easily at their approach. Inside was what appeared to be a command center, with monitoring stations arranged in a semicircle around a central platform. Most of the technology was dead, screens dark, but a few emergency lights still cast a dim red glow over the scene. And there, in the center of the room, was the human. Zhk'Tarl corrected himself based on the xenobiological briefing, sat in a chair that had been modified into something resembling a nest. The human was wrapped in layers of fabric, thin-limbed and pale, with facial hair that had grown wild and unkempt. His eyes were closed, breathing shallow but steady. Around him, in meticulously organized patterns, were hundreds of containers, some Zhk'Tarl recognized as food storage, others as liquid vessels. Many were completely unfamiliar. All were empty. "Is it dead?" whispered Fnx, though their translator modules were disabled to avoid startling the creature. Before anyone could answer, the human's eyes snapped open. They were startlingly blue against his pallid skin, and despite the evident physical weakness of his body, those eyes were sharp, alert, and unnervingly focused. He looked directly at Zhk'Tarl and spoke, his voice raspy from disuse but surprisingly strong. "Took you guys long enough. I was beginning to think I'd hallucinated that radio signal." Zhk'Tarl froze, mandibles clicking in confusion. Radio signal. They had sent no such thing. He activated his translator slowly, the device humming as it processed and produced sounds in the human language. "We detected your life sign. We are a xenobiological survey team from the Galactic Federation." The human's face twisted into what Dr. Yl'Soreth would later identify as a smile, though at the time it appeared disconcertingly similar to a threat display. "Aliens. Actual aliens." He laughed, a dry, cracking sound. "Of course. I survived nuclear war, biological warfare, the collapse of civilization, 12 years alone in this concrete coffin. And first contact happens when I look like absolute hell." He ran a hand through his tangled hair. "Just my luck." Zhk'Tarl turned to Dr. Yl'Soreth, switching off his translator. "Is this behavior normal?" The Arcturian's skin rippled with uncertainty. Humor as a stress response is documented in many species, but this level of casualness upon first contact is unprecedented. The human cleared his throat. "I can still hear you, you know. Your little translator thing works both ways." "Neat. Tech." Zhk'Tarl's compound eyes widened fractionally. The translator was designed to be unidirectional. It shouldn't be possible for the human to understand them when it was inactive. "How are you doing that?" he asked, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. The human shrugged, a gesture that sent visible pain through his weakened frame. "I've had a lot of time to study patterns. Patterns are everywhere if you're bored enough to look for them." His gaze drifted to the extraction team, studying each alien species with undisguised curiosity. "So what happens now? You taking me to your leader?" Zhk'Tarl hesitated. Protocol dictated that surviving specimens from self-extinguished civilizations be humanely euthanized after study. But this human was unusual. His survival defied explanation. His behavior defied prediction. "We will transport you to our vessel for medical evaluation," Zhk'Tarl said finally. "You appear malnourished and in need of attention." The human's smile widened. "Believe it or not, this is me at my best in recent years." With visible effort, he stood from his nest chair, swaying slightly. He was taller than expected, though still shorter than Zhk'Tarl. "Name's Eddie, by the way. Eddie Fletcher, former IT support specialist, current last man on Earth. Pleased to meet you." He extended a hand toward Zhk'Tarl, who stared at it in confusion until Dr. Yl'Soreth gently intervened. "I believe this is a greeting gesture, Commander." Cautiously, Zhk'Tarl extended a chitinous foreclaw. The human grasped it without hesitation and moved it up and down briefly. "Strong grip," Eddie commented. "I like that in an alien abductor." As the extraction team prepared to transport the human back to the shuttle, Zhk'Tarl couldn't shake the feeling that this mission had just become far more complicated than any protocol could have prepared him for. This human, this Eddie Fletcher, was unlike any surviving specimen they had ever encountered. And somehow Zhk'Tarl suspected that was exactly why he had survived when all others had perished. Aboard the cruiser, Eddie Fletcher became the focal point of intense scientific curiosity. The medical bay, normally reserved for the occasional injured crew member, was transformed into a xenobiological research center. Screens displayed the human's vital signs, tissue samples were analyzed, and behavioral observations were meticulously recorded. Through it all, Eddie maintained an attitude that baffled the alien scientists. He seemed neither traumatized by his ordeal, nor particularly impressed by his interstellar rescue. Instead, he approached every procedure, every question, with a casual nonchalance that Dr. Yl'Soreth found psychologically improbable. "You're saying you survived on expired nutrition packets for 5 years?" she asked during one interview session, her transparent form pulsing with disbelief. Eddie, now cleaned up and dressed in a standard-issue medical garment, shrugged. "The expiration dates on that stuff are super conservative. Most of it was still good for years after the printed date, and when it wasn't," he grinned. "Well, food poisoning builds character. And after the food ran out, got creative. Fungus farms in the lower storage areas, protein synthesis from, recycled organic matter. You'd be surprised what's edible, if you cook it long enough." He paused, noting the patterns of disgust rippling through Yl'Soreth's transparent body. "Sorry, is that grossing you out? Hard to read alien body language." "Not disgust," she corrected. "Astonishment. Your adaptability exceeds all xenobiological precedent for your species." Eddie laughed. "You should have met my college roommate. That guy could eat anything on a dare." Commander Zhk'Tarl observed these interactions from behind a one-way viewing field. The human's behavior continued to perplex him. By all accounts, Eddie Fletcher should be psychologically shattered, physically debilitated, and socially dysfunctional after such prolonged isolation. Instead, he was telling jokes, solving complex logic puzzles presented by the research team faster than many crew members could, and displaying an uncanny ability to adapt to alien social cues. "He makes no sense," Zhk'Tarl muttered to Lieutenant Fnx, who had been assigned to monitor the human when the science team was resting. "Perhaps that is why he survived, Commander," she suggested, her wings vibrating thoughtfully. "The others may have been more sensible." "Meaning?" "The sensible response to their world ending would be despair. Perhaps this human's illogical nature is precisely what sustained him. He does not behave as though his situation is hopeless, even when all evidence suggests it is." Zhk'Tarl considered this. The Vespidian collective valued logic and order above all else. The concept that irrationality could be adaptive was deeply unsettling. His mandibles clicked in decision. "I must report this case to Central Command. This human presents unique research value. The euthanasia protocol will be deferred." Fnx's antennae twitched in surprise. "That violates standard procedure, Commander." "Note my decision in the log, Lieutenant. I take full responsibility." With that, Zhk'Tarl turned and marched toward the communications chamber, his exoskeleton clicking rhythmically against the metal flooring. Back in the medical bay, Eddie Fletcher was teaching Dr. Yl'Soreth how to play rock, paper, scissors with her pseudopods, completely unaware that his fate had just taken an unprecedented turn. The response from Central Command came swiftly and was unlike anything Zhk'Tarl had anticipated. Instead of the expected reprimand for protocol violation, he received new orders. Transport the human specimen to the Galactic hub for presentation to the High Council itself. "They're treating this like a major discovery," Zhk'Tarl told his senior staff, mandibles twitching with unease. The last time a post-extinction survivor was presented to the Council was over 700 cycles ago. Dr. Yl'Soreth pulsed with excitement. "This is a tremendous opportunity for xenobiological research. Eddie Fletcher represents a unique case study in survival adaptation." "Eddie Fletcher," Zhk'Tarl repeated the name with difficulty, "is one specimen from a self-extinguished species. I fail to see why the Council would take such interest." Lieutenant Fnx cleared her throat nervously. "Commander, there's something else you should know. The human has been interacting with the crew." "Explain." "During his designated rest periods, he has somehow been leaving the medical bay and socializing. He's taught the engineering staff several Earth games involving small objects and probability calculations. He's been instructing the nutrition synthesizer operators on human food preferences. And yesterday, he spent 3 hours with the navigation team discussing what he calls shortcut possibilities through sections of space we consider impassable. Zhk'Tarl's compound eyes narrowed. How is he bypassing the containment field? Fnx's wings fluttered in embarrassment. We don't know, Commander. The field registers as active, but he moves through it at will. When questioned, he simply says, "The field has glitches that are obvious if you pay attention." This was unacceptable. Containment protocols existed for a reason. Allowing an unclassified specimen free range of the vessel violated every security procedure in the manual. "Bring him to my chamber," Zhk'Tarl ordered. It's time I had a direct conversation with our guest. 20 minutes later, Fletcher stood before the commander's desk, looking remarkably at ease for someone facing the ship's highest authority. He had been provided with approximations of human clothing, though he wore them in ways the fabrication system hadn't intended. With sleeves rolled up and fastenings arranged in an asymmetrical pattern the crew's cultural database could not identify. "You wanted to see me, Commander?" Eddie's tone was casual, as if this were a routine meeting between colleagues rather than an interrogation. "You have been violating containment protocols," Zhk'Tarl stated flatly, his translator rendering the accusation in what he hoped was appropriately severe human language. Eddie shrugged. "Sorry about that. I get restless. 12 years in a bunker makes you kind of stir-crazy, you know? Besides, your crew is fascinating. So many different species working together. It's like Star Trek, but with better catering." Zhk'Tarl had no reference for this Star Trek, but chose to ignore it. "How are you bypassing the containment field?" "Oh, that," Eddie waved dismissively. "Your security systems are actually really impressive, but they have a pulse frequency. Everything digital does. Wait long enough, observe the pattern, and you can just step through between pulses. Basic stuff." Zhk'Tarl stared at him. What the human described was theoretically possible, but practically impossible. The containment field pulsed at nanosecond intervals specifically to prevent such exploitation. "You're claiming you can perceive and predict nanosecond pulses with your biological senses?" Eddie looked momentarily confused, then laughed. "God, no. That would be superhuman. I just noticed the control panel on the outside has a tiny power fluctuation indicator. Little light blinks in sequence with the field pulses. Wait for the blink, move quick. Trial and error." Zhk'Tarl was stunned into silence. The power indicator was a maintenance feature, not intended to be visible from inside the containment area. And even if it were visible, correlating its pattern to the field pulses would require extraordinary observation skills and patience. "You did this out of boredom?" "Pretty much. Look, Commander, I'm grateful for the rescue and the medical attention, but I've spent over a decade entertaining myself with whatever was available. Your ship is the most interesting thing that's happened to me since the world ended. Can you blame me for exploring a little?" Zhk'Tarl found himself in the unusual position of not knowing how to respond. The protocol violation demanded punishment, but the human's explanation revealed a resourcefulness that was, frankly, impressive. "We are setting course for the Galactic hub," he said finally. "The Council wishes to examine you personally. Until we arrive, you will be assigned quarters outside the medical bay with appropriate monitoring. No more unauthorized wandering." Eddie's face broke into a wide smile. "My own room? With a real bed instead of an examination table? Commander, you're a scholar and a gentleman, or the insectoid equivalent anyway." "I am neither a scholar nor familiar with this gentleman concept," Zhk'Tarl replied stiffly. "This is a practical solution to prevent further security breaches." Sure, Eddie nodded, still smiling. "Practical solution. Definitely not because you're starting to like having me around." Before Zhk'Tarl could formulate an appropriately dignified rebuttal, Eddie had already turned toward the door. "One question before I go," he said, pausing in the doorway. "This Galactic Council, they're not planning to dissect me or anything, right? Because I've seen enough sci-fi movies to know how these things can go." "The Council observes strict ethical protocols regarding sentient beings," Zhk'Tarl assured him, somewhat offended by the implication. "Great. Looking forward to it then. First contact, take 2. I'll try to represent humanity better this time. Maybe comb my hair." As the door closed behind Eddie Fletcher, Zhk'Tarl found himself experiencing an emotion rarely felt in his long career: uncertainty. The human was unpredictable, illogical, and somehow endlessly adaptable. In the rigid hierarchy of the Galactic Federation, such qualities were typically viewed as dangerous. Yet Zhk'Tarl couldn't help but wonder if perhaps they were exactly what had allowed this improbable survivor to endure when his entire civilization had fallen. The journey to the Galactic hub would take 17 standard days. During that time, Eddie Fletcher transformed from a scientific curiosity to something approaching a crew member. Despite Zhk'Tarl's misgivings, the human's presence had an unexpected effect on the ship's operation. Efficiency in the engineering section improved after Eddie suggested a reconfiguration of the power distribution system, a change so simple yet effective that the chief engineer, a six-limbed Doraxian named Vrule, had actually performed a traditional gratitude dance in the mess hall. The navigation team found their calculations simplified by what Eddie called eyeballing it, an imprecise but strangely effective method of plotting microjumps that reduced computational load by 30%. Even the recreation periods became more animated, with crew members from different species gathering to learn Earth games like poker, chess, and something Eddie called charades that led to much interspecies hilarity and occasional minor diplomatic incidents. Zhk'Tarl observed all of this with growing concern. "The human is disrupting established protocols," he complained to Dr. Yl'Soreth during their daily briefing. "He's improving morale," she countered, her transparent form glowing with amusement. "When was the last time you saw the galley staff voluntarily extend their shift to experiment with new recipes? That's not the point. There are procedures, hierarchies. His influence is chaotic." "Perhaps a little chaos is beneficial, Commander. Our mission efficiency has increased 12% since he came aboard." Zhk'Tarl's mandibles clicked in irritation. "We are not discussing ship performance. We are discussing the unprecedented integration of an unclassified specimen into crew operations. Central Command would never approve." "Central Command ordered us to deliver him to the High Council," Yl'Soreth reminded him. "They didn't specify how to manage him during transit." Before Zhk'Tarl could respond, the ship's alert system activated. Not the blaring emergency signal that indicated immediate danger, but the soft, pulsing tone that signified an unexpected development requiring command attention. "Commander to the bridge." Lieutenant Fnx's voice came through the communication system, sounding oddly strained. When Zhk'Tarl arrived, he found the bridge crew clustered around the main sensor display. And there, in the center of the group, pointing at something on the screen, was Eddie Fletcher. "And that's why I think it's artificial," the human was saying. "The radiation pattern is too regular. Natural phenomena have randomness, but this has a repeating sequence. Someone built it." "What is happening here?" Zhk'Tarl demanded, his translator conveying his displeasure clearly. The bridge crew scattered back to their stations, leaving Eddie standing alone by the display. He looked up with that now familiar casual smile. "Hey, Commander. Sorry to disturb you, but I noticed something weird in the sensor data while I was chatting with Fnx. There's a structure out there that doesn't match anything in your database." "You do not have authorization to access sensor data," Zhk'Tarl began, but Eddie waved him off. "I wasn't accessing anything. The display is visible from where I was standing. I just happened to notice a pattern." He pointed to a section of space that appeared empty except for normal background radiation. "There. It's cloaked, but the cloak creates a subtle distortion in the background radiation, like a ripple in still water." Zhk'Tarl moved closer, compound eyes focusing on the area Eddie indicated. At first he saw nothing. Then, adjusting his vision spectrum, he detected it, a faint rhythmic fluctuation in the radiation field, so subtle that the ship's automated systems had filtered it out as background noise. "Lieutenant, focused scan on these coordinates," he ordered. Fnx's wings buzzed nervously as she complied. The main screen shifted, enhancing the area in question. Slowly, as the computer applied various filtering algorithms, a shape emerged from the apparent emptiness of space. A structure, massive and artificial, floating in what should have been vacant interstellar space. Identification? Zhk'Tarl asked sharply. Unknown, Commander, Fnx replied. Configuration does not match any registered vessel or station in Federation records. Eddie leaned forward, studying the shape with obvious curiosity. Looks like a hub and spoke design. Central core with radiating extensions. Classic setup for a space station designed to generate artificial gravity through rotation. We are well outside any known civilization's territory, Zhk'Tarl noted, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. This region should be uninhabited. Well, somebody didn't get the memo, Eddie said, and they went to a lot of trouble to hide that station. Question is why? It was a good question, and one that protocol provided a clear answer for. Unidentified structures in neutral space were to be reported to Central Command and avoided pending investigation by specialized teams. The safest course of action was to adjust their route and continue to the Galactic hub. But something about the station nagged at Zhk'Tarl. The cloaking technology was sophisticated, beyond what most known species possessed, and its location, far from established trade routes or habitable systems, suggested a purpose beyond normal commercial or scientific activities. Lieutenant, maintain course but reduce speed. Prepare a detailed scan package for transmission to Central Command. He turned to Eddie. How did you detect this when our systems did not? Eddie shrugged. Like I said, I notice patterns. When you've spent years staring at the same bunker walls, you get pretty good at spotting anything out of the ordinary. It's not that special. But it was special, Zhk'Tarl realized. This human's perception, his ability to see connections where others saw only noise, was extraordinary. Perhaps it was this, rather than any physical adaptation, that had allowed him to survive when his world died. We will investigate further, Zhk'Tarl decided, surprising himself almost as much as his crew. Standard approach, passive scans only, alert status yellow. As the bridge crew moved to comply, Eddie gave him a curious look. I thought you were all about following protocol, Commander. Protocol allows for command discretion in unusual circumstances, Zhk'Tarl replied stiffly. This qualifies. The truth, which he would never admit aloud, was that Eddie's discovery had sparked something Zhk'Tarl had not felt in many cycles. Curiosity. The regulated, predictable rhythm of Galfed. Service had long since extinguished such unprofessional impulses, yet here it was again, that desire to understand, to explore the unknown. It was unsettling, it was inappropriate, and it was, Zhk'Tarl had to acknowledge, distinctly invigorating. As the cruiser approached the mysterious station, the bridge, crew maintained a tense silence broken only by the soft chimes of sensor equipment and the occasional status report. Eddie had been asked to return to his quarters but had diplomatically pointed out that since he'd discovered the station, he might notice other details the crew missed. Zhk'Tarl had reluctantly agreed to let him stay, provided he remained out of the way. Passive scan complete, Commander, Lieutenant Fnx reported. Structure is approximately 2.4 kilometers in diameter, with a central hub and 6 radiating arms. Materials analysis suggests composite alloys not matching known Federation or neighboring Empire construction techniques. Life signs? Zhk'Tarl inquired. Indeterminate, the station's shielding blocks detailed biological scans, but power systems appear active. Environmental systems are operating at minimal levels. It's been abandoned, Eddie said suddenly from his position near the rear of the bridge. Recently, but definitely abandoned. All eyes turned to him. Zhk'Tarl's antennae twitched with annoyance. You cannot possibly determine that from passive scans. Eddie pointed to the visual display. Look at the exterior lights, they're running in a standard pattern, the kind of automation you'd see in maintenance mode. But there are gaps where some have failed. Nobody's replaced them. And see those external hatches on the lower section? 2 are partially open. Nobody leaves airlocks unsecured on an active station. The bridge crew studied the display more carefully. The human was right. The station showed subtle but clear signs of neglect that would be unthinkable in an occupied facility. Most compelling observation, Dr. Yl'Soreth admitted, having joined them on the bridge out of scientific curiosity. But if abandoned, by whom? And why maintain power and environmental systems? Only one way to find out, Eddie suggested with a hint of excitement. We go have a look. Zhk'Tarl's mandibles clicked rapidly. Out of the question. Protocol dictates. Oh, come on, Eddie interrupted. You've already broken protocol by investigating instead of reporting and avoiding. Might as well go all the way. Besides, aren't you curious? The human had an infuriating ability to target precisely the emotions Zhk'Tarl was trying to suppress. He was curious, deeply, unprofessionally curious. A minimal exploration team, he found himself saying. Myself, Lieutenant Fnx, Dr. Yl'Soreth, and 2 security personnel. The human will remain aboard. What? No way, Eddie protested. I found it, and I have experience with abandoned facilities. Lived in one for 12 years, remember? This is not open for discussion. You are under our protection and not trained for potential hazards. Eddie crossed his arms, a gesture Zhk'Tarl had come to recognize as stubborn defiance. With all due respect, Commander, I survived the apocalypse. I think I can handle a space station. Before Zhk'Tarl could formulate a suitably authoritative response, Dr. Yl'Soreth intervened, her form rippling with conciliatory patterns. The human's observational abilities have proven valuable, Commander, and his experience with emergency situations cannot be discounted. Perhaps we could include him under strict supervision? Zhk'Tarl felt himself being maneuvered into a corner. The logical arguments for bringing Eddie made tactical sense, but every instinct warned against exposing their unprecedented specimen to unknown risks before delivering him to the High Council. Your survival is a priority mission objective, he told Eddie firmly. I cannot jeopardize that for the sake of exploration. Eddie's expression softened slightly. I appreciate the concern, really. But sitting alone while everyone else gets to explore a mystery space station? After 12 years in isolation? That's just cruel, Commander. The appeal to empathy was unexpected and frustratingly effective. Zhk'Tarl found his resolve weakening. You will remain with me at all times, he conceded finally. You will. Follow every instruction without question. At the first sign of danger, you return to the ship immediately. Eddie's face broke into a wide grin. Yes, sir. Scout's honor.